Megyn Kelly and Glenn Greenwald had a debate about the U.S.'s role in the Middle East and how our support for Israel affects the region. Let's watch some of that.
All right, but let me ask you about that one. I get that, and I cede that point, but I also feel like, Glenn, they hate us. They hate, like the Iranian, not the Iranian people, but like the leaders over in Iran. They're going to hate us less if we don't back Israel. I don't buy it. Hell no. They hate us because of our principles, because of our Constitution, because of the way we live, because women walk around in tank tops. We could go down the list, but it's not going to go away if we stop supporting Israel.
Megyn, this was the debate about 9/11. Like, why did they hate us? Why did they attack us? And the neocon narrative was, oh, they hate us for our freedoms. And bin Laden repeatedly said, there was that letter that recirculated that was banned from TikTok. We are angry at America because they are constantly insinuating themselves into our region. They imposed a sanctions regime on Iraq that killed hundreds of thousands of Iraqi children. They put troops on Saudi soil. The reason Iran hates us, and I'm not justifying it at all, but I think it's very important to have an open eyes about your own country, is that in 1954, we overthrew their democratically elected government, the CIA did, and we imposed on them for the next 25 years.
So I thought that was a pretty good exchange of views on the subject, and I applaud them for having a civil and rational conversation about it. It's an important subject. What do you think?
I think Glenn is uniquely consistent in this realm and able to move in spaces and be allowed to come into spaces where he can say true, apolitical, but anti-war, frankly, things in environments where all too frequently the kind of veneer of being oppositional to the establishment and being anti-war is assumed by old jingoistic tropes like they hate us for our freedoms. It was pretty remarkable to hear Megyn Kelly, who's an intelligent woman who has made substantive arguments in the past, a lawyer and the like, really fall back on the idea that all of the animosity toward the United States can be explained by the fact that other countries are basically envious of us or hateful of the fact that we have equality for various groups that they don't believe in. And it was really, frankly, masterful to see Glenn push back against that, not in a judgmental way, but basically saying, Megyn, don't you remember that just recently there was a huge scandal on TikTok because the kids were rediscovering the post 9/11 Osama bin Laden letter, where he articulated clearly, and you don't have to take anybody at face value, but he articulated reasons as to why he was frustrated with the United States of America. And ironically, chief among them was the treatment of the Palestinian people and their denial of statehood. And so all of these years later, to be embroiled in these same kind of regional conflicts and to have major American commentators still defaulting to, we don't have to think about this. All we know is we got to defend ourselves and fight back. The only way this is going to stop is for us to destroy them because they hate them for our freedoms. No, they hate them because of the things that we do. And if we want to stop the conflict, we have to stop doing or supporting those kinds of actions.
I would say they're motivated. We could take the hating us language out of it, which Glenn really attempted to do there. They might still dislike or for religious reasons think our values or our Western decadence are bad and are going to condemn us to eternal hellfire, but it's not about their hate. Their motivation to attack American military bases and service personnel is because they're stationed in that area of the region, accomplishing very little to the good. I mean, we now know, as some on the right who are dissident voices on the time, like Representative Ron Paul, running explicitly on this issue of saying what is emerging, what is coming from our wars on terror, our wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Are we actually making ourselves safer? Does anyone believe we've made these places healthier, more functioning, more stable countries where there's going to be less violence against the U.S. and Israel, frankly? And the answer obviously is no, to the extent that most Republicans and conservatives now concede that is in fact the case, that these were mistakes. And so I think, reframing it a little bit, and I appreciate Glenn saying it's not about agreeing with their reasons or saying, well, that makes Osama bin Laden justified. Obviously not, because attacks on civilians creating mass death are totally morally abhorrent and evil. So you don't have to say he's right, but we should try to understand what motivates terrorists to behave the way that they behave. I don't even know, and frankly, with some of the regimes, because then Megyn says the people versus the regime, some of these, frankly, regimes in the Middle East seem to not want conflict with Israel or the U.S. and feel like they're being dragged into it by the actions taking place. Maybe the people have a lot of sympathy for the Palestinian people and want conflict over this. Iran just sent a bunch of rockets, like basically rigged to fall out of the sky and not hit anything. Not literally, but you know what I mean. They don't want a broader conflict. Saudi Arabia thinks this is a whole headache. So are these outlaw regimes that we can never get along with or never do business with us, or is it like the U.S. and Israel? They're actually they don't want massive confrontation and global conflict if we can work these things out.
Yeah, the one thing that is extremely clear in the current situation is that Israel is the party that wants escalation, and they are alone in desiring that. The United States, the Biden administration has been clear that this was a tit for tat, and Israel was the first tit, Iran was the tat, and you don't get another bite at the apple, Israel. You were the one that struck their embassy first, or their consulate first. Iran, I think you're right. There has been an analysis by some people who say the fact that they used old equipment, they did not expose the full extent of their capacities to launch a strike, but they did provoke Israel to demonstrate their full capacity in resisting a strike. A substantial number of the bombs that were actually deterred not by the Iron Dome that we pay hand over fist for, but by America shooting the bombs out of the sky to the cost of $1 billion, I might add, that it exposes their kind of defensive limits, that they targeted. Unlike Israel and its siege on Gaza, they targeted military operations in Israel, as opposed to civilian outposts in Israel, to the extent that something got through, that it was military targets and not domestic targets. Now, ironically, some people in Israel responded to that. There was like all the social media campaigns showing all the buildings standing and Israel looking happy and lovely, saying, this is all you got, like, look at how much worse we did to Gaza. But that's an indictment of the strategic approach that Israel has taken to Gaza, as opposed to that which Iran has taken in their response. So in the middle of all of this, for Megyn Kelly to still be making an argument about kind of the moral superiority of the war as it's being engaged by our allies, by the West, by Israel, when Iran has just demonstrated enormous restraint in all that it has just done in its retaliatory strike, is just so colossally missing the point. And it makes you really understand how we end up in all these multiple decades-long wars that the American public eventually tires of, but is largely supportive of in the first instance, because this kind of rhetoric predominates.
Yeah, I mean, supportive. I mean, it depends. I don't think anybody in the U.S. is clamoring for a broader war with Iran, or ground troops being sent to the region, or any of that. I think the American people are often very wise when it comes to foreign policy, especially compared to our leadership in both parties. And I'm glad, as we talked about earlier in the show, that there seems to be a little bit of a line being drawn with Israel on this front, on the Iran expansion, with the Team Biden very clearly saying, don't do that. And Netanyahu has not, there seems to be a desire for retaliation specifically on Netanyahu's part, and I frankly just don't know how much more widely that is shared in Israel. I know there is tremendous support among the Israeli people for what is happening in Gaza. I don't know if the same would be said for further retaliation with Iran. I would hope not, because it is, again, totally unnecessary. Take the win and back off that one.
Yeah, I do wish, and I think Glenn's point about America's interventionism in Iran was very well taken. I do wish some of the focus on defunding the deep state were more focused on the pernicious role the CIA has played in global destabilization over the years. Again, another reason why I so value Glenn's presence in this media space. Whatever you think about him, he's one of the most knowledgeable and historically rooted people, and he's not going to allow, you could see a little smile kind of creep up across his face when Megyn Kelly was talking, because he's never going to let a moment like that pass, and he's able to do so and engage with people who are so ideologically opposed without making them feel small or kind of personally attacked. And I think it fostered a really good and important conversation. So kudos to the two of them for having a meeting of the minds there on that subject. Do stick around. We have more Rising for you coming up next.